Hello, everyone. Welcome to our breakdown of UFC 272 here on Dine Sports. I'm Anthony Marro, joined by my brother Nick, and we're going to break down this card top to bottom. Just run through the fights now, midweek, see how we're feeling about each of them. And we will have a full write-up available on Dine Sports Saturday morning. I hope all of you will tune in and check it out. Nick, how are you doing tonight?
Good, man. Good. Really fun card. I mean, there's a lot of people talking crap that it's not necessarily worth the pay-per-view price now that we lost Vaziev and there's no title fights. But I mean, in terms of depth, like there's a lot of good fights on this card. So I'm looking forward to it. Like to me, I mean, the pay-per-view is the same as the prelims. Like we watch every single fight. So as long as there's good fights top to bottom, I'm happy. I don't need it to be super top heavy. So I'm excited. Really good cards. Some good spots to make money too, I think.
For sure. And I mean, even if it's not, necessarily the most stacked pay-per-view card, obviously at the top, we have Colby Covington facing Jorge Masvidal and what's a huge grudge match. These are two former teammates. So why don't we jump right into it, start breaking down the card. We can start right here in the main event with these two welterweights. Covington opening or currently sitting at a minus 330, large favorite over Jorge Masvidal. And, obviously he's a top welterweight. We just saw what he did in the cage against Usman 2 times. Obviously putting on a good showing and, kind of proving he is that number 2 welterweight in the world. So the line is somewhat warranted. Surely, with his wrestling skills, you'd think he'd have the advantage there. But what are your thoughts on this fight right now?
Yeah, I mean, Colby's the favorite. I think, what is it now? Minus 300 we're looking at or close to it. So I don't know. It seems like a good line. Jorge starts last time out against Usman, but I still see him as the much better striker here. But I don't think that's necessarily going to matter. Not only does Colby have the wrestling advantage, but I think the cardio advantage is going to be a big deal here too. I mean, if we look back, Masvidal did good to kind of hang with Usman the first time around. But like if you look at the Diaz fight, like he started to fade in that third a little bit. I mean, he kind of started to fade in the Usman fight the first time when they met in July 2020. But yeah, man, I mean, it's pretty straightforward to me. It's really striker versus grappler. But I think Colby's striking is closer to Jorge's striking than Jorge's grappling is close to Colby D1 All-Americans grappling. Like he's probably going to stand with him a little bit. And I think the one chance Jorge has is if he can really get Colby emotional, get him to stand, get him in a phone booth, then he's very live for an upset. And I mean, you have to look at the Askren fight. You have to look at the Till fight. Like no one was really giving him a chance in those spots either. At the time, Till was like the next champ. Like everyone was super high on him. Askren seemed unbeatable, 19-0 when they met. Clear wrestling advantage, same exact deal. But I mean, I don't think Colby's just gonna dive in and shoot immediately. I think he has much better striking than Askren did. But at the same time, you have to like look at those fights and just say, hey, I mean, or hey, when he's a dog, when he's pushed into a corner, that's when he's at his best. And he's pissed off, man. I mean, listening to all the interviews, like against Kamaru, you could tell it was kind of fabricated. He really hates this guy. I mean, Colby, I think hates Jorge, but I don't think he hates him nearly as much as Jorge hates him. Like Colby, it's always kind of an act, but I agree. Like he's the much better fighter, especially at this point in their careers. Like obviously Jorge has an experience advantage, but he's also, how many years older is it? It's let's see.
Right. So now
3 years. Yeah. So I mean
37.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, I could just piggyback off that. I mean, Colby as well has looked really good as of late. Obviously, the 2 fights against Usman were a bit different because he really could not implement that grappling. But we saw what he did to, Tyron Woodley, what he was able to do to Rafael dos Anjos, who's the co-main event on this card. So he clearly, against these guys that aren't going to be that high-level wrestler, obviously implementing his style. And yeah, like you said, it sounds like how the story goes, at least, that it was Colby that kind of, was the cause of this fracture. I don't think he really holds that same animosity and is trying to go in there and really beat up Masvidal. He's going to implement his game, get it to the ground, grind him out there and beat him up there too. I mean, he says he wants to punch his face, and he's still going to be able to, implement his high pace and really put a beating on, Masvidal, especially over the course of 5 rounds. a live dog, as you said. Like we've seen him do it so many times before. He's very talented on the feet. But there's a clear reason, Covington's the favorite, and I think he's going to get the job done.
Yeah, and let me say this too. I mean, I think if you're back in Colby, you could probably wait. Honestly, like the casual money doesn't start coming in until later in the week most of the time. I mean, there will be some sharp money on Colby, but I don't think at minus 300 there's going to be a ton of it. I mean, Masvidal's a dog, man. Like all it takes is one exchange, one break, one stuff takedown. It could come in the third, fourth, fifth round, and he'll be live that way. So I do think Colby's a viable parlay piece. I would not bet him inside the distance. I know a lot of the times when we have these big favorites, we're kind of looking for that extra value. I don't know. Like I almost prefer to just use him in parlays. I don't think I'm betting him straight at minus 300, and I really don't like any props here, except for maybe the over. But
right.
Where are you seeing it set? Yeah, like I think it's like over
seeing,
4.
Yeah, it's basically even money to go the distance or not. So kind of up to you. I was looking at kind of playing some of those overs as well. And then yeah, Covington, especially with this being the last fight of the night, big favorite. You can have him closing out your parlays, and then you're even able to go ahead and hedge as this fight approaches. That message popped up. Sorry for everyone. A few technical, just getting us settled here, but we're gonna roll on.
Yeah, are we good though? Like I'm just wondering because on my screen I see me in a little tiny box and your huge head. Like on your screen, is that what you're seeing? There's no stats, no anything. So I'm just making sure that we're good.
We're all set.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Just checking. Good stuff.
All right. Moving on now. I mean, we could obviously go on for the main event.
Yeah. I mean, we could go on forever. It's interesting because it's a grudge match. It's fun because it's a grudge match. But when you look at the welterweight division, Colby is definitely above Masvidal in more than one regard. Like he has the well-rounded game. Like you almost need to be a wrestler to even compete in that division right now. And he is, and he's great. And after Usman, I mean, he's definitely the best welterweight in the world after Usman. So yeah, I like Jorge. But yeah, this is Colby's fight to win or lose.
Agreed. Moving on now, we have the co-main event, which is a bit interesting. So this is Rafael dos Anjos taking on Renato Moycano at a catch weight of 160 pounds. So you may or may not have seen this fight was originally supposed to be Rafael versus Rafael, with dos Anjos taking on Fiziev, who unfortunately had to pull out due to contracting coronavirus. So now in steps Moycano on very short notice, flying from Brazil, cutting, he said, 20 pounds down to make this fight, which is actually going to be taking place over the course of 5 rounds, something we, aren't normally going to see in a main event, but certainly something that you would think to favor dos Anjos being the one, prepared for this fight. Moycano really looked good in his last performance, which only came a few weeks ago against Alexander Hernandez. That was a fight he won by a rear naked choke in the second round. And, he looked good, but he also looked a bit tired towards the end of the first. And I think, with this fight being 5 rounds, RDA, former champion, gritty vet, he should be able to definitely stretch this fight out and, implement his game plan over the course of 25 minutes. I think there's a lot of value on him right now at minus 170. What are your thoughts on this fight?
No, I'm with you, man. I totally agree. I think a big factor here is that we've seen RDA fight and have success at 170. Moycano, most of his success has come as low as featherweight, which is 145. So I think just off the bat, RDA is going to be bigger, even though they're going to weigh the same on weigh-ins. Like, RDA is definitely the stronger fighter of the two here. You mentioned the cardio. I think that's a major factor. I think 3 or 4 of RDA's last 4 or 5 fights have been 5-rounders. He definitely had a 5-rounder with Felder, Edwards. And yeah, man, I just think he's probably a little bit better everywhere. Like Moicano's more of the finisher. Like he's going to chase the subs. He's going to go for the knockout. And I think that's his best path, is if you can maybe catch him early. But I mean, RDA is not really a chinny guy at all. Like we've seen him in wars with Lawler. We've seen him in wars with tons of guys. The last time he was knocked out was Eddie Alvarez back in 2016. Alvarez obviously hits like a truck, and he just got caught there. So I don't know, man. I don't see a KO for Moicano here. I think while obviously Moycano is the better BJJ guy, like in terms of jiu-jitsu and just submission grappling, I see RDA as a much better wrestler. And I think that strength advantage is going to be a major factor here. So as long as he doesn't get caught early, as long as he doesn't do anything stupid, I think he maybe drops the first round. So like, I love the value on RDA just as a straight money line bet, but I honestly think we're going to get a better number on him if he drops that first. And there's a good chance he does. I think Moycano comes out firing kicks, maybe looks for a few takedowns of his own, might even secure one. But like you said, we saw him tiring in that Hernandez fight. He looked great against Fiziev until he didn't. He kind of, yeah, he has a really short gas tank. He's not on a full camp. He put on weight. He was going to see his family. Like, he was not preparing for a fight at all. And I don't blame the guy. Like, this is a great step up. I mean, if he can get a win here, he's going to be in the title talk real quick. Like, he'll just need another win or two. But yeah, I think he's running into a wall. I love that the public's all over Moycano. It's definitely some recency bias. We haven't seen RDA fight since 2020 November. It's a split decision on paper, but I don't know if you remember that fight. Chris Lee, man, that guy sucks. Terrible judging on that card. Like, the right guy won. It was definitely RDA's fight, but when you look at that, it was not a split. It was a very clear unanimous decision. He used his grappling. And I think the only way you beat RDA is to outmuscle him. And I do not see Moycano as being able to do that. So
yeah, and I mean, you look at RDA even further. The guys that have had that success are those welterweight wrestlers: Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington. Like,
Chiesa.
being able to get them down like that, right? Chiesa too. But in spots
all
where he has
170.
that advantage are obviously going to be spots where he should excel. Mixing up the striking as well from southpaw stance. You know, he really is a very talented on the feet too. And I think in this spot, he should certainly be able to get the job done against a guy like Moycano. I am not going to be waiting until the end of the first round to bet this fight. I already have.
Yeah, no.
I
don't blame you.
Yeah, and I think the value is there because just looking at this on paper, even with full camps matching up, I think RDA should be, you know, in the 2-to-1 range against a guy like Moycano. Not taking anything away from him. I just think stylistically it's tough. And even though he is like the bigger and longer fighter, not as bodied up, you've seen RDA on Embedded this week, really looking fit. And I think you're right that he should be able to definitely grind this out and look good against a short notice opponent.
Right. And I just want to say, for what it's worth, I was looking long and hard at RDA as an underdog against Fiziev when he was plus 200. Like, I just thought he'd be able to outgrapple him. Like, we saw Riddell kind of single leg Rafael Fiziev, and RDA is a much better wrestler than Brad Riddell. So I was pretty excited to make that dog play. Now we get him at favorite odds, but I think there's still value. I like that you got the bet in already, but I will say, like, all this theme has gone towards Moycano. Eventually there'll be some buyback, but we might be able to get a slightly better number. If it gets under 150, that's probably where I'll hit it. But if not, I mean, I'm fine to hit him in the 50, 60. I'd probably bet him up to 180, even minus 200, honestly.
Yeah, 200 is where I was happy to get him and to see.
I don't get the disrespect, man. Yeah, people underrate RDA, and it's insane. He's a former champion. He doesn't fight that often, but when he does, he comes prepared. So, yeah, we'll see.
Okay, we'll move on to our feature bout next. I just want to shout out everyone watching. My apologies for how things have looked thus far, just with going through these fights. So if you just stick with us here, I'll make sure that moving forward the rest of this card, we have everything more presentable for you. This fight at featherweight, Bryce Mitchell going against Edson Barboza. A really fun fight, a striker versus grappler matchup primarily against the undefeated, or with the undefeated Mitchell currently sitting as a minus 155 favorite. What are your early thoughts here?
Yeah, this is a really tough one to call. Another case of striker versus grappler. But in this case, I think Barboza's striking is a bigger gap than Mitchell's gap in grappling, if that makes sense. I mean, we've seen Edson Barboza tested against the best of the best. I mean, he's been in there with Khabib. We've seen him take out Shane Burgos by KO. He has wins over Dan Hooker, Beneil Dariush, the top of 155. Now he's down at 145, and he did not look good against Giga Chikadze at all. I think he lost every round in that fight. I know I picked him there because he looked great going in. But I don't know. This does feel like a get right spot, and I do think there's value on the underdog. But at the same time, I mean, Mitchell has such a clear path. If he can keep him down and make it boring, that's what he has to do. I do. If you're a Bryce Mitchell backer, you do not want him standing and trading with Barboza. Barboza, he's smart. He kind of baits guys into thinking they have a chance on the feet. We saw this against Americani. We saw it a little bit against Burgos, but Burgos is a really good striker. Mitchell is just not on that level yet. And I will say this, I mean, as impressive as Mitchell has been, like his best win on his record is what? Is it Andre Fili, who's an unranked fighter? Like this is a massive, massive step up. And I know he gets a ton of steam from the UFC. Like they love promoting this kid. He's hilarious. He's got the camo shorts officially, which is nice to see for him. But yeah, man, there's just no quality wins on his record really outside of like, I don't know. There's just not that much that stands out. And then you look at Barboza's resume, and obviously he's in the twilight of his career. He doesn't have many great years left. But I mean, everyone's talking about Chikadze fighting for the title going right after that fight. So I don't know. I think right now I'm not 100% decided. I'm leaning Barboza. The path is there for Mitchell, though, man. I just don't think he's going to be able to keep him down long enough to just win on the scorecards, just grinding him out positionally. Like this is not that guy. Like you can't just dominate him like you do with Charles Rosa or even an Andre Fili. I don't know. Barbosa's so damn good on the feet. I think I'm gonna back him here, and I probably go decision. We've never seen Mitchell KO'd, but if it was gonna happen, this is the type of matchup where it's definitely a possibility.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to play MMA math or anything here, but Barboza obviously thought highly of prior to seeing Giga beat him up. But then Giga going and falling to Calvin Kattar really shows that featherweight is just full of top tier talent. And this is really
Absolutely.
Bryce Mitchell breaking into that. As you said, hasn't really fought someone quite this caliber yet. I think it is interesting. The UFC often does this. They pair you up with a guy who, may expose your weaknesses or, to test to see where you're at. And I mean, there's no question that Barboza is one of the best strikers, maybe, ever in these lower weight divisions. A lot to think about when you're in the cage there against him with his wide arsenal of strikes, his kicks, and, his size too, with a 5-inch reach advantage over Mitchell. It really is going to be imperative for him to get things to the ground here. It's just the domination of Mitchell when we've seen him down there with, I know, a lot of lower level guys, but clearly confident in his jiu-jitsu and, now adding more layers to his game. You're training with a rather, he obviously mixes it up with a lot of pros and other UFC fighters, but primarily keeping his camps tight and, just working on honing his skills even further. I like what I've seen. I think a year off, may do him well even more and, coming back into the cage and putting on a show here, but it's definitely scary when you're facing a guy like, Barboza. So I'm definitely not rushing to bet him as I have the past few times he's fought. It should be a really fun fight though.
Right. And yeah, just a couple quick more things. I mean, obviously Barboza is a great striker with all his limbs. I think he's going to have to kick a little bit less here. Obviously that could open up some takedowns for Mitchell if he is throwing a lot of big kicks. So I think it's going to be a lot of boxing where he's going to be much better. And then I will say this, Barboza has been submitted before, but it's against guys with great striking. It was Cowboy Cerrone and Tony Ferguson. I don't know that Mitchell has the well-rounded game to necessarily get it there. So it's a tough fight. Currently, like I said, though, I think I'm backing the dog, but very, very fun and close matchup for sure.
Absolutely. Another fun matchup prior to that is Kevin Holland returning, now making a welterweight limit to fight Alex Cowboy Oliveira. Holland at minus 330 favorite right now, so same size as Covington. Very different fight here. What are your early thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it feels like the UFC is trying to do Holland a favor. I mean, obviously Alex Oliveira's game, he's tough, he's dangerous, but man, he's a little bit washed at this point. I mean, he's only 34, but he has fought a lot. He's been in a ton of wars. He's definitely slower than we've seen him ever in his career. I mean, he had a good fight with Nico Price, but Price clearly won. And I mean, I don't know. I just don't see him taking down Holland enough to kind of grind out a decision. And I think that's the path against Kevin Holland. Like, if you're a better striker, that's rare at 170. I don't see Oliveira as the better striker. Holland's a much better striker. He knows how to use his range well. And I'm sure Oliveira maybe shoots for some takedowns and gets one or two early, but he does not have the gas tank to wrestle for 15 minutes anymore at all. Like, I just don't see that as a path. I mean, we've seen him tire out. Like, I don't know, the Price fight, his cardio held up better than it has in a while, but I'm just not at all confident in him going to the takedowns, going to the grappling, which he's going to have to do here against Holland. I like the weight cut down to 170 for Holland. He's fought there earlier in his career. He was definitely small at 185, so this is probably his proper weight class. A few less wrestlers to deal with as you climb up the ranks too, so I think he does have a higher ceiling in this division. I still don't see him as like a top 5 guy though, but luckily for him, that's not what this matchup is at all. I think he rolls here. And yeah, man, the UFC wants to see him get back in the win column. He's so easy to market. And that's what this feels like. Like, sometimes you just have to see, what is the UFC trying to do with this matchup? And it's very, very clear they're trying to get Holland back in a win column. I think he's dropped 3 straight. So
yeah, and that's especially after 2 losses where he's kind of doing the favor, stepping in for 2 main events against Brunson and against Marvin Vettori. And then, yeah, as you stated, Oliveira really, I am doubtful he could keep up with Holland when things are standing. And with Holland just drilling his wrestling, knowing that's a deficiency of his, we should see that much improved. And we should also see it much improved now at 170 compared to against guys, that clearly outweigh him and can outmuscle him with his, long frame at 185. So, yeah, it feels like a feeder fight. The one thing I will say, while Holland has made 170 in the past, I think 2 of his past 3 times he was making the cut, he did actually miss. And, Holland obviously with his frame is a bit sketchy, even looking when he's cutting all that water out. So just definitely want to check him on the scales before you're going to, throw him in your parlays. But I do see him getting the win here.
Agreed.
And then the main card opener is a heavyweight fight between Sergey Spivak and former NFL Greg Hardy, now professional MMA fighter. It's been an up and down career for Hardy. He's definitely had some moments. The last fight against Tuivasa was fun for as long as it lasted. Him clipping Tuivasa and then getting his light shut out, rushing in there afterwards. Clearly he's a big guy with a lot of power. And you could see the improvements from when he had first stepped into the cage at the UFC level versus, the athlete we're getting now. But there is a clear skill, gap between him and a lot of guys in this division, including a guy like Spivak, who, while not a huge threat on the feet, is well-rounded and definitely has the grappling to, whether it be just bring Hardy to the mat and, work on submissions or, really grind him out there, as his cardio has been a bit suspect in the past. It's a tough fight. What are your thoughts here? Do you have a lean?
Yeah, I definitely lean Spivak here. I am not at all impressed by Hardy. I mean, like you see on the regional scene, there'll be these guys, they're huge heavyweights, and they're big and strong, so they can knock anyone out. Obviously, he's a professional athlete. He was a former NFL player. He can be explosive, but the biggest thing is this dude has really bad asthma that's not going away anytime soon. So his window to win is pretty much the first round, and then after that, he gets worse as the fight goes on every single time. And I think Spivak's the opposite. We've seen him be a slow starter against Olynyk a little bit in the Felipe fight. Kind of took him some time to get going. I think as long as he's defensive early and Hardy doesn't just rush him and take him out, I think that's Hardy's one path, is just to clock him in the first 2 minutes. And if he doesn't, I think Spivak is going to grind him against the cage, take him down, advanced position, and work for the submission. Like we've seen against Hardy with Tybura, he could ground and pound him or he could sub him here. Spivak has some of the best jiu-jitsu at heavyweight. I'm not saying he's great, but there's just not many heavyweights that are really leaning on that part of their game right now. There's no impressive wins on Hardy's record as far as I'm concerned. Maurice Green's been cut. Jorgen De Castro's been cut. And I mean, Spivak, at least he beat Bandera. At least he beat Olynyk. Like, he's a borderline ranked guy. I don't see Hardy as that. So, yeah, I mean, Hardy's live maybe for a flash KO, but I really like the under here if it's under 1.5. And I like Sergey here a lot. I mean, you always have to be careful with heavyweights. I mean, just look at what happened with Tuivasa and Lewis. Like, and if they're going to stand and swing, anyone can go out. But I just don't think Spivak is that stupid, and he has a full camp. He took the fight on short notice against Hardy, which tells you his team thought he was much better then, and now he has the full camp. I don't see that favoring Hardy. And another thing I'll say about Greg Hardy is I think he's delusional. Like, you listen to him talk, he thinks he's better than he is. Like, I know you have to be confident, but he was complaining about Tuivasa, how Tuivasa knocked him out. He was trying to say that KO loss is going to make guys not want to stand and trade with him. Like, what are you talking about? Like, how many yes men are around this guy? Like, I don't know. I know he's with Rashad Evans, who I love. Great, very heady coach, but I just feel like you're coaching a brick wall with Greg Hardy. Guy's obviously a questionable character. I know this, like, my bias is showing here, but he's just not.
I mean, clear bias, and I'll
Yeah, but like,
defend the guy a bit here.
what about his ability has told you he's going to have any success in the UFC? I mean, obviously he's green, but he does not look good, and he has zero cardio, like less than probably any heavyweight.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that Greg Hardy will probably never be a top 15 heavyweight, but it doesn't mean he can't win this fight. I mean, listen, he is.
It's possible. It's heavyweights, but yeah.
We just saw Spivak knocked out, obviously by a much better striker in Tom Aspinall, but Hardy has power to at least match that. And takedown defense is really going to be the key here, because Spivak isn't that all that threatening on the feet. Obviously has the volume, but really doesn't have hands that strike a lot of fear into most heavyweights. I think Hardy, with a significant weight advantage, with Spivak usually tipping the scales under 240, and Hardy having a significant cut to make this weight. And takedown defense that held up in the past, it certainly is a spot where that first round is going to present a lot of danger to Spivak, not able to get Hardy to the mat. And there's an opportunity for him there to definitely clock him. And with the underdog price, not a lot of dogs that I love on this card. Come Saturday, I could be pulling the trigger on Greg Hardy, and it's definitely something I've fallen victim to in the past.
Yeah, you've been on Hardy a few times, as I recall, in bad spots. But I like, he's obviously live for that early KO, but do you really want to bet on such a small window? And that's where I'm at, and I just don't. And the thing about Spivak, his takedown accuracy is almost like 60% as a heavyweight, which is crazy. Like, he's not just going to single leg and try to lift Hardy up in the air. Like, he's really good body locks. He has different ways to get him down. He's probably going to push him against the cage and take him down there. And yeah, I just don't see Hardy staying standing. So maybe Hardy clocks him. If that's where you want to go, I get taking the plus money, but that's the only path. So I'd much rather back Sergey.
Yeah, or even a Hardy bet early. If he gets out of the first round, you have Hardy by KO, something like that. Perhaps throwing Spivak some money down when this line tightens up.
That's fair.
Okay, that concludes the main card preview. We got the prelims. We got Jalen Turner fighting Jamie Molarkey at lightweight. This is the card right prior to the start of the pay-per-view. These are two really fun lightweights. I get why, the placement on the card here. Turner, usually a guy that the UFC likes putting on pay-per-views, and a southpaw versus orthodox matchup when these two are standing. Do you have a lean for this fight? I know the odds are currently close, with Turner a -165 favorite.
Yeah, there's a few fights. I mean, we're recording this a day earlier than we normally do. There's a few fights I still need to run more film on. This is one of them. It's a really close matchup. Two guys that like to strike. Turner obviously has that really long reach, and he also has really dangerous submission grappling. But Molarkey, man, he's tough. He's going to keep coming forward. I think he's the better technical wrestler, just in terms of getting the fight to the mat. So yeah, man, I mean, this is a true coin flip as far as I'm concerned. I want to spend a little more time digging in. I mean, Turner's looked great lately, but it's against really low-level competition. Brock Weaver rings a bell, Josh Kulabau. And then, yeah, I mean, Molarkey, other than that Ziem fight, which I still can't wrap my head around why he looks so bad. He's looked great lately. KO Devontae Smith, who's earlier on this card. Kama Worthy knocked him out of the UFC. So, I mean, I don't know. I like Molarkey, and he really won me over that debut fight against Brad Riddell. Like, that's one of my – I remember watching that and just being very taken back. Like, okay, this kid's going to be good. No one gave him a chance against Riddell. I'm trying to find the odds now. He was only a slight underdog, but I mean, like if you look at what Riddell's become, like he going to war with Fiziev and beating Dober, like he's a top 15 guy in this division for sure. And Malarkey gave him everything he could handle. So I don't know. I don't want to play too much MMA math, but we've seen Malarkey kind of like overcome more in fights, and I see this as a dogfight that's probably going to go 3 rounds. So I don't know, maybe it doesn't go 3 rounds actually,
Right.
but I do lean Malarkey right now just because I think as it goes later he's going to have advantages. But I mean, Turner's definitely the cleaner striker. Like he's definitely going to look better technically on the feet, especially early. So another
Love
fight I
that.
need to spend more time watching some film for. But
Love that forward pressure from Malarkey, really bringing the fight to Turner, likely in the spot too. Yeah,
good
I
way to,
mean, on the feet, it really is a coin flip. So the side of the underdog with Malarkey is certainly appealing. I do worry he implements the takedowns, and just with how Turner's grappling has honestly been as of late, that worries me. If Malarkey's shooting in defensive submissions, but even just controlling position or winning scrambles like that could be a place in which he falls vulnerable. And I mean, Turner has a lot of other, factors that I like when things are standing. Obviously, the size advantage with a reach that's really, I think longer than most in this division at 77
oh yeah.
inches. Yeah. And then, the ability to wrestle as well. Well, I don't think that's going to be part of his game plan in the spot. Obviously being the guy on top and, controlling those exchanges would be to his benefit as well. So, definitely
Yeah.
one I'm undecided on too. Sounds like you're sort of leaning Malarkey. I think I'm leaning
Yeah.
Turner as of now, but
Okay.
yeah,
I like it.
we will
Yeah.
see.
I mean, there's a good argument to be made for both guys. I'll just throw some stats out here since we're not giving like a firm pick yet to help listeners, viewers kind of decide for themselves. I mean, the good thing about Turner is, like I said, he's the better technical striker. He's throwing more than double the significant strikes per minute. 6 landed per minute's a very, very high clip. Malarkey's only around 3. But Malarkey's averaging almost 4 takedowns per 15 minutes, and I think that's what he's going to have to do here. The best way to close reach and distance is to put the guy on his back. So again, this is a really close matchup. I think both of these guys have upside in terms of their career. They're both still pretty young as far as I know. So tough fight, fun fight. But yeah, definitely one you guys want to check out the article for when it comes out Saturday morning, because this is it deserves a little extra research for sure.
All right, now we will take a look at this women's strawweight bout. One that a lot of people are kind of sleeping on here. I mean, these are two really high-level women's fighters, and what we've seen out of them as of late. While Yang Xiaonan's coming off a loss, Rodriguez has looked incredible, and both these two are really fun strikers. They put on great performances. What you were just saying with Turner, or Turner 6 strikes per minute, Yao Xiaonan the same, averaging about the same. Definitely a volume striker. Well, I think Rodriguez is going to have more success, like landing powerful combinations, elbows in the clinch. She definitely has a lot more like finishing type strikes. These two are definitely going to be throwing down, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun watching them compete on the feet. Rodriguez a pretty sizable favorite at a -270. I don't know. Do you feel that line's warranted? I definitely understand why she's favored, but I mean, tough matchup here.
Yeah, she's my pick here, but I do think the line's too wide. And let me just say, it's pretty criminal that this isn't on the main card or the feature prelim, and like you have Greg Hardy against Spivak on there. Like, it doesn't make any sense, because really this is probably a title eliminator. Both of these girls lost to Carla Esparza, who's fighting Rose Namajunas next for the title at strawweight, and the winner of this is going to be next in line. Like, there's really no other argument to be made for anyone else. So I don't know. Like, the fact this is buried on the prelims is kind of baffling to me. I know they're trying to sell pay-per-views, so maybe you put this on, but this is going to be a war. Both of these girls can eat shots. They'll both keep coming forward. They're both going to throw a ton of strikes. You were talking about Jan, how she throws 6 per minute. Marina throws 5. So they're both just going to be throwing and throwing and throwing. Probably won't see any takedowns here. Might see some clinch work against the cage, but I don't know. We've just seen better performances from Marina lately, and I think that's why the line's so inflated, and that's probably why I'm favoring her as well. She looked amazing against Mackenzie Dern, stuffed all the takedowns. That's not really going to be an issue here against Yan Xiaonan, but I don't know. We've seen her beat Ribas, Waters, Dern, and then Yan. I mean, obviously she got smothered by Esparza, but I mean the run she was on wasn't as impressive. Like she beat Hill, Kovacevic, Gedalia. None of those are on the level of the Derns or the Watersons in this division. So we've just seen Rodriguez find very similar success, but against a higher level of competition. So that's kind of why I'm edging her here. Both very highly technical strikers, though. This is one I'm looking forward to. And like I said, I mean, this is probably for a title shot. So the fact it's buried on the prelims is kind of baffling to me.
Right, both ranked highly. And then, yeah, with Jianan, that fight against Esparza is probably why the line is where it's at, but that's obviously not what we're going to see here. It's not like Rodriguez is going to be looking for takedowns or things like that. So, definitely, I feel like being undervalued, but I mean, I've loved what I've seen out of Rodriguez so far. So,
Right.
I can't imagine me, flipping or taking that underdog shot in a spot like this, but definitely a great fight. Definitely some fight of the night potential here between these two.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I will say, like, in terms of value on an underdog, Jan is definitely one of the better ones on this card. But it's just so hard to pick her here against Rodriguez, who just is completely surging right now. Since that loss to Esparza, she looks untouchable. So I love her here. I really want her to fight Joanna. I think that would be an absolute banger if she wins here and they need to wait because Esparza's fighting Rose in a few months or whatever. But she's going to deserve a title shot too. So she could just wait around if she needs to. But fun matchup. Looking forward to it. I'm siding with Rodriguez. And I mean, I haven't looked yet, but I would be curious what Rodriguez by decision is if you can get better odds on her. That might be the way to go. I'm looking now. Yeah, Rodriguez by decision's even money. So that's probably the bet.
I would have to agree with that. And again, you'll want to tune into this one. This is not a fight you guys are going to want to miss. Let's see, just prior to that, light heavyweight matchup. This one is close. The odds have kind of stayed close all week here. Kennedy Nchezuku against Nick Negamarianu. A great fight. Well,
can't say it every time.
Cannot say it every time. But what we have seen, kind of a volatile performances out of Kennedy. The last fight, a really bad loss, just never got it going, and that's kind of been his MO. A slow starter, someone who really doesn't seem to get into the fight until he's taken a few shots, until he's kind of felt his opponent, and obviously that plays to his detriment when we just saw him knocked out early by taking a defensive position. However, in this fight, I mean, against a guy who's probably going to be pushing the pace, pressuring him, perhaps trying to take him to the mat, I could see him as the bigger guy, definitely touching him up and being able to use his power and size, especially for light heavyweight. They don't get much bigger than Nchezuku. Touching him up, and then clearly the power as well, as we've seen in his two most recent wins, late knockouts, coming alive late, putting his hands together late, and landing really hard combinations. So I think I get why he is favored here, but I'd love to hear your opinions on this matchup.
Yeah, this is another tough one to call. And the thing about Kennedy Nchezuku, and it's so frustrating, he's such a slow starter. And I think it's funny he trains out of Fortis because like Uriah Hall's very similar at 185, like really technical, good strikers, but they just don't bring the fight. Like they need the fight to come to them. But I think what works in his favor here is that Negu Maranu is going to do that. I made a good play and made a nice little chunk of change. No, that was a different one. Yeah, well, he knocked out Ike, but that wasn't it. I'm thinking of something else. Anyway, I don't know. It's another tough one to call. The thing with Kennedy is he needs to throw punches. You can't just stand there for 5 minutes and expect to win a fight. He has that kind of shell guard that you see like Alistair Overeem use, Yoel Romero. So he's a counter striker. But yeah, I think Negrumanu's going to bring the fight to him. So I'm leaning him right now. I think he can catch him with a check hook or something like that, but it's really not a confident pick. I mean, both of these guys have some upside, but it's pretty low level as far as light heavyweights are concerned. I don't know.
Yeah, and
this is another one I need to spend a little more time on, honestly. It's just, you got to hope that Negramanu brings the fight to him and he can catch him with something. But I don't know. Like we really don't know that much about this Nikolai guy. Like we saw him beat Kimura.
And yeah, the wins really don't do much for me. I mean, Ike Villanueva the Kamer fight, which was really not a great fight, and a split decision as well. But then even his fights prior to the UFC, I mean, all his opponents really have losing records or
Right.
a 7-5. So I'm not entirely sure if he should be competing against guys quite this level, or what his shelf life is going to be if he's facing top 20, top 30 guys in that light heavyweight. And then the other thing you had mentioned with Nchukwu's defense, definitely don't mind backing the guy with superior defense, because what I have seen out of Nikolai is he eats some shots, and in a spot like this against a power puncher, I could see that being to his detriment. So yeah, a fight I'm not totally sold on either side to this point, but I think my lean is Kennedy, at least here in midweek.
Yeah, that's my lean as well. But this is another one. Definitely, anyone listening, watching is going to want to check out the article because there's more homework to be done.
All right, now we have a women's flyweight bout to break down between Maria Agapova and Myra Moroz. This is also a grudge match between two American top team fighters. A lot has been said back and forth about Agapova perhaps having some issues there at the gym that Moroz had amplified, and as a result, Agapova called her out after her last win. So this is another grudge match, another ATT grudge match. Agapova right now is sitting as a -180 favorite. I think while these two are pretty even on the feet, what we've seen from Agapova is that she's a really dangerous southpaw striker, and also one that could take the fight to the mat. Implementing her ground game, I think could be a path to victory in this fight, especially against Moroz, who hasn't really had great takedown defense in the past. So perhaps bringing her to the mat, beating her up there is going to be how she gets her hand raised. But even if these two are standing on the feet, I also like what we have seen out of her there. Obviously, some issues with the gas tank in the past, but I think by staying measured and fighting this fight like she has her more recent one, it's definitely going to set her up for success. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is another tough one to call, and like the main event, it's a grudge match. Yeah, so it's funny, they were both American top team teammates, but the difference here is these girls never really liked each other. They did spar together before, but Moroz just kind of disrespected her. She just like chucked her around when she was very new to MMA, which is kind of funny. I mean, Moroz has faced the better competition for sure. They both have wins over Sabina Mazo, but I mean, Bueno Silva's a nice win, and then to lose to Helena Esparza, it's fine. It's whatever. To lose to Shayna Dobson, which Agapova has done, probably a bit of a red flag. But I mean, the thing is, Agapova is younger. She's more athletic. She's going to be more dangerous on the feet. I actually give Moroz maybe the slight grappling edge. I think she's kind of the better wrestler right now, just in terms of technical ability. But yeah, man, I just don't feel great about the line. Like, I'm definitely siding with Agapova here, but to see almost a +180, +200 on Moroz is very tempting, knowing she's faced a better competition, knowing she's definitely getting up for this fight. And I mean, you can't totally ignore the fact that she's from Ukraine and the war is going on right now. Is that going to be a negative? Is that going to be a positive? Like, I don't know. But that's definitely an X factor here. So it's almost just a fight I don't want to get too involved with. There's just a lot of question marks, two emotional fighters for different reasons that don't like each other. Both pretty good everywhere, but I would give Agapova the advantage on the feet and probably Moroz the advantage grappling, but it's not a big advantage either way. So I just feel like the line's a little too wide here. Wait, what's the...
Yep. Agapova -180, Moroz +155.
Okay, I'm looking at Tabology who has it flipped.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah, and Agapova has floated as high as like a -220 this week. You can get different prices at different places. I've been high on her for a while. Obviously, the Shayna Dobson fight, I lost quite a bit of money, but she's I think improving with every fight. And you can also hear from some of her interviews and things like that there really have been some other like outside factors weighing on her career thus far. And I think this is one of her better camps, and I'm expecting, a performance out of her similar to what we just saw, beating Moroz here. At this line, I probably will end up taking her, or perhaps even, sprinkling inside, which I'm sure is a nice plus money. Based on this being a grudge match and her ability to finish that we have seen in the past.
Right, but I will just kind of counter that with Moroza's never been finished. And again, she's faced higher, tougher competition for sure. The scary thing with Morozo, and like a part of me wants to back her as a dog, is she's pulled out of 4 fights in a row. Juana Carolina, Manon Fiorot, Talia Santos, Montana De La Rosa withdrew. That's a red flag for sure. But it seems like she's focused coming into this fight, seems ready. But yeah, man, I like Agapova. That's my lean. That's my pick. But at 180, I don't feel great about it. 200, I definitely don't feel good about it. So.
And her post-fight, after her last victory, Agapova said, "I would like Moroz. We have business to finish. I hope she shows up." So just you mentioning the withdrawing and all, I'm glad this fight got booked and look forward to seeing it this Saturday. And as well as a big-time prospect, Umar Nurmagomedov, closing out the early prelims with a fight at featherweight against Brian Kelleher. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, Umar is another one of these guys coming out of Khabib's camp, coached by Khabib. Looked great against Morozov his last time out. That was probably his best win. I mean, yeah, he fought on PFL, so he's faced some better competition than some of these guys that are kind of young in their UFC careers. But yeah, I don't know, man. The line has just gotten out of hand. I like Umar here. I'm pretty confident in picking him. But we've seen Kelleher win before as a huge underdog. He has that nasty guillotine. We know Umar likes to shoot for takedowns, so there's opportunity for that there. And Kelleher, I mean, he has flash KO power at 135, which is pretty rare. So, I mean, he's certainly live for the upset, but at the same time, like, I mean, as good as the price is, and as much as I would say he's the value side, I don't really want to back Kelleher here, even a plus 450 to 500. Like, I don't know. I just don't feel like that's a Hail Mary I'm really willing to play. And I mean, as good as Kelleher's looked recently, it's against terrible competition. I mean, Domingo Pilarte, Kevin Kroon, Ray Rodriguez. I mean, he had that nice win over Azure, but they cut Azure. I don't know why. But that was his best win the past few years. Like, it's been a while since he's beaten anyone good. He's kind of one of these gatekeepers that's like, if you can beat him, you'll become a ranked fighter. Like Stamen beat him. He was ranked for a while. Ricky Simone beat him. He's still ranked. And Umar, to me, is certainly going to be ranked in this division. So I see Umar as the rightful favorite. I don't know about the price, man. Minus 700 just seems a little ridiculous.
Yeah, and how about this for Khabib? It took until his 7th fight, a short notice matchup with Daryl Horscher, to be more than a minus 500 favorite. And now we have Umar here against an established UFC veteran and Brian Kelleher, already at a minus 650. It has certainly gotten out of hand. Largely due to the last name, but also, I mean, you got to give it up for the talent that we have seen out of Nurmagomedov.
Oh, he's good.
Really good striker. I mean, you see what he does with his kicks and, what he's able to do on the feet. And then obviously coming from that camp as well, his grappling. I really think regardless of where this fight goes, he is going to be in good shape. With this being at featherweight as well, a lot of the times with this camp, obviously cutting weight is big. And, when you see these guys step into the cage, they are big, they are strong. And I think that's only going to help Umar in this matchup. Keller's last fight was against Kevin Kroon up at featherweight, and he said he planned to move back down after. So I don't think this is his choice to be matching up at 145 pounds with such a talented prospect here. The 2 outs for Kelleher, it's going to be a defensive submission, a guillotine, if Umar is going to be shooting like a traditional double leg type, which I really don't see. Or obviously him landing with power on the feet. Really good, able to land that left hand, good out of both stances. But I feel like what we've seen out of Umar against higher level of competition than most of these, 13-0 guys making their second UFC fight. I think he is going to get his hand raised come Saturday.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. He's the better technical striker. I mean, we talk about all these Russian guys that train under Khabib. Obviously, they're good chain wrestlers. Umar is that, but he's also a very highly technical striker. And I think that's the difference here, because not only does Kelleher have to stand and strike with him, he has to worry about that takedown, which takes away from your power because you're kind of backing up a little bit, always ready to sprawl. That's going to make things tough for Kelleher here. And if he isn't, he's just going to be on his back. So I
And
don't know.
perhaps the worst performance we've seen out of Kelleher as of late was against Ricky Simone when he was kind of just dominated on the mat. So
Crush.
if Umar does go that way, I don't think it's going to be too much resistance.
Right. It is unfortunate. Minus 670, 700. Like what? Like you not only are you paying too much because he's undefeated, you're paying too much because of the last name, like you said. So like if I was lining this fight, it'd probably be like the 350 range, honestly. 600 is insane. I'll look it inside the distance, but Kelleher's tough too. I don't know that he necessarily finishes him. So I don't want to invest too much there. So
yeah,
maybe I'll pull him into some parlays if we're getting some juice out of it, but I don't know. Right?
And honestly, for those of you who are chasing dogs, this I would argue is not the worst spot with a number
at the price
at this much.
If you're just looking for value, like there's guys like Gianni, like certain guys just bet on value. Like this guy shouldn't be this price. I have to bet him. Like if that's your philosophy, this is a spot where you back Brian Kelleher. I know we've had this conversation plenty of times. Like for me, it's like, okay, I don't want to bet all this value because you can't pay the bills with closing line value. So I'm not rushing to play Kelleher here. But if you're the type to throw $20 on a few underdogs on a card, yeah, maybe this is a good spot for it, for sure.
All right. Getting down to a few of the early fights now at flyweight. Tim Elliott taking on Tagir Ulanbekov, 14-1 record, currently favored as a minus 230. In this matchup of two southpaws. Tagir is not somebody you want, striking from what we have seen thus far. I wouldn't say inept on the feet, but definitely doesn't have what you need in order to succeed at the UFC level there. Throwing 2 significant strikes per minute, just too low, or my apologies, landing 2. But obviously the takedown, winning scrambles, using his strength there is how he gets a lot of wins against these lower level flyweights. But Tim Elliott's a tough guy. Tim Elliott is a very good flyweight who has been a staple of the division for quite some time. Kind of a gatekeeper at this point in his career, but obviously the work he's been doing with James Krause has paid dividends, and always an attractive underdog pick. I know you are a big fan of him, so are you taking him in this spot?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm getting 2-1 on him, I'm very, very tempted. I think this is going to be a case of Tagir getting too much respect because he's with Khabib, too much respect because of his really nice record. But you look at his wins, man. He beat little Bruno Silva, who's really not a great fighter. I think he's been cut. And then Alan, actually, I don't know if he's been cut, but that doesn't matter. And then Alan Nascimento, like he clearly won that fight, but Nascimento is not that good, man. And Elliott's only lost to like guys who end up top 10. Like it's similar to what we were talking about earlier. I forget which fight it was, but he's not going to lose to guys that aren't going to make noise in the division. Figueiredo, the champ. Askar Askarov, who's in a title eliminator. Royval, who's one of our favorite prospects in the division. And then last time out against Nicolau, I mean, he lost, but Nicolau, man, he's probably the most underrated flyweight on the roster. So I don't put Tagir in that category. I don't think Elliott's a great striker either, but he is going to throw at least. Like he's between 3 and 4 significant strikes landed per minute. If they do stand and trade, he's probably going to win on volume. I mean, he's going to throw the more damaging shots. Tagir, yeah, he can wrestle, but I don't know that he's strong enough to hold Elliott down. Like Elliott's pretty damn good in scrambles. I don't know, man. I'm leaning Elliott for sure right now. I do want to spend a little more time digging into Tagir. Like, you know me, like once I have a pick, I like to change my own mind. Like I'm going to try to poke holes in picking Tim Elliott here, but right now at plus 200, it just seems like probably my favorite underdog on the card for now.
And I mean, I could definitely see that side as well. With Elliott, it's definitely going to be any exchanges on the feet. Elliott should be ahead in this fight. He throws awkward strikes. He has an awkward style, but he also does throw with much higher volume. He looks to be aggressive. He looks to push the pace. He throws good leg kicks, which could be a way in which Ulanbekov gets him to the mat. But with these flyweights, it's always fun scrambles. It's always switching positions. So it is a spot where I definitely see the value on the underdog, and could end up being swayed as I dig into this fight a little deeper myself.
Yeah. Right now I'm liking Elliott, but I got to spend a little more time on this one. But yeah, I want to say too, I mean, defensively, Elliott's the better striker defensively. He's absorbing less shots and then landing more per minute. And then, like you said, I mean, both of these guys are pretty good in scrambles. Tagir's not going to muscle Elliott and hold him down that way. Like, he's going to have to maybe catch him in a submission or something, which he could certainly do. But just betting on value, I mean, this is a spot I'm actually willing to kind of take that dog shot, because I do think that Elliott's being disrespected at this price. Tagir's getting that Russian love. I mean, we got Islam just had a great fight, obviously. Umar's on this card fighting right after him. So I think everyone's going to be betting all these guys, and I think they're just kind of overlooking this one a little bit. Elliott did not look great his last time out, but this is a step down in competition, not up. And it's quite the opposite for Ulanbekov in a big, big way.
Yeah, and just if you were told this fight's going 15 minutes, unless that's 15 minutes with like 10 minutes of control time for Ulanbekov, that probably indicates it's going to be back and forth. Elliott's landing more strikes on the feet. So especially with how judging has been, he could absolutely be the one getting his hand raised.
Agree.
All right, 2 more fights to break down here. This is going to be a good one. This is at lightweight. So normally these are 2 featherweight fighters, but Ludovic Klein will be fighting Devontae Smith at lightweight this weekend. Right now, Smith is the favorite, sitting at a -160. Do you have a lean for this matchup?
Yeah, this is probably the one I'm the most torn on. Like, I know I said I was pretty torn on Malarkey, but I'm leaning Malarkey over Turner. This one I'm really like 50-50. I think Smith is going to be more dangerous early. We almost always see that out of him, but as he starts to fade, Klein could take over. But at the same time, Klein's had cardio issues of his own. I mean, Ludovic Klein is a guy I know we were both really high on coming into the UFC, and then he lost us both plenty of money going against Mike Trezano as a -230 favorite. Trezano just kind of picked him apart, wasn't the most exciting fight. And then last time out against Landwehr, luckily I didn't back him, but as almost -400, he completely gassed out and then got choked out. So, I mean, if we're just going off recent performances and the fact he's taking this fight on short notice, I think you have to go with Smith. But at the same time, I mean, Smith has plenty of holes in his game as well. Jamie Malarkey, who's on this card, not exactly the biggest power puncher, starched him in the second round. Kama Worthy, cut from the UFC. I know they're training partners.
Weird fight, yeah.
Yeah, weird fight, but I mean, he got fucking knocked out, excuse my language. But yeah, man, I'm just not that impressed with Smith. His only like big win recently was Justin James, who we kind of joke about probably shouldn't have been in the UFC. So there's really more reasons not to like either of these guys than there is to like them. I mean, they both have knockout power. They both have power for this weight class. Like they definitely hit harder than their weight suggests they would, but I don't know, man. I don't like either of these guys that much. They're both guys I kind of want to fade more often than not recently, and here they are facing off against each other. So I'll run some film on this one. I'll rewatch the Malarkey fight again. I watched it a few days ago, and then yeah, man, I got to rewatch that mess of a fight against Trezano for Klein, and yeah, there's just it's tough to pick. So I almost just favor Smith because he's on the full camp and Klein's taking this on short notice, but probably my least confident pick on the card.
Short notice certainly helps, or certainly hurts Klein in regards to the cardio department, based on what we have seen thus far. But the extra 10 pounds should at least balance that out, perhaps making him a bit more fresh in the later rounds than we usually do. One thing I'll say, he's probably going to be the power in this matchup. He throws less strikes per minute. He looks to land big kicks, big strikes in order to put his opponent out. Yeah. More so going to be the one chasing the finish than Smith, who I think is more well-rounded and definitely capable of putting on the volume, putting volume on Klein over the course of this fight. Smith has also finished a lot of his, or all of his fights.
Yeah, he's never seen the scorecards.
Never seen the scorecards. Klein, a finisher as well, just saw him finish. So I love the under in this spot. You could get does not go the distance at a -175 right now. Really like that. And yeah, just with these two matching up, my lean is Smith. I mean, I think in this spot, he is going to be able to outmuscle Klein. He's going to be the stronger guy. And with Klein likely chasing power shots, big kicks, it could be a spot where Smith definitely starts to add up damage and put it on Klein in the later rounds, as we have seen. He's definitely dangerous. I mean, we saw that head kick knockout that he was able to get in. That was his debut. But I mean, in this spot, I really think it's going to be a fight that is action packed and does not see the judges' scorecards. So I'm more confident saying this goes under than picking either side. But I'm leaning here is Smith.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, right now I'm leaning Smith, but like I said, this is one I'll definitely spend a few more hours digging into.
Mm-hmm. All right, and then the last fight to break down, this is Dustin Jacoby against Michelle Olajaychuk at light heavyweight. Two strikers. I mean, Jacoby, the kickboxer, Olajaychuk more so doing the work with his hands. A fun matchup to open the card for sure. What's your lean here?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I think Jacoby's definitely the more technical of the two, but I would definitely give Olajaychuk the power advantage. So, I mean, it's tricky. I think Jacoby's probably my lean. He is my lean right now. I've backed Olajaychuk as a dog and made some good money before, but this is not necessarily the best spot for that. Like, I like Olajaychuk when he can come out and just start someone. Jacoby's good at distance management. They're in a pretty big cage here. And yeah, I just think he's the better technical striker in a matchup that's going to take place on the feet. But yeah, at the same time, I don't think Jacoby's like some unstoppable force or anything like that, obviously. He's coming off a win over John Alon, really not that good. Darren Stewart, cut from the UFC. But he's looked good in some other spots too. So I'm a little bit more confident in him than Olajaychuk. Who is it who he just fought? Shamil Gamzatov, who was undefeated. So I cashed a nice plus money ticket on him there. But this is tough. Well, it closed at Pick'em. It was not a Pick'em when I hit it.
I got you. Yeah, I mean, the power is definitely the primary path to victory for him. At light heavyweight, we've seen that, Polish power translate. I just think Jacoby is, the far superior striker, a credentialed kickboxer. He's on a 7-fight unbeaten streak himself. Really looking good thus far in the UFC, in my opinion. I mean, I've liked what I've seen. I think he's pretty clean. I like the pace he, pushes, landing more than 5 significant strikes per minute. And I think as well in a matchup like this, where Olajaychuk's mostly going to be focused on throwing his hands, definitely going to be susceptible to the kicks of Jacoby, throwing way more, whether it be low or to the body or, knees, things of the sort. So I think definitely has the ability to finish Olajaychuk, but definitely if this were to go 15 minutes, should be the more technical striker, should be the more active guy. I see him getting the job done in this matchup. And at minus 200, probably going to be opening my night with whether it be a bet on him or in a couple of parlays, can rebuild if Olajaychuk is able to
that's the beauty of betting the opener. Yep, for sure. I do want to say this though, surprisingly, Olajaychuk actually is the better defense in terms of stats in the UFC striking. 65% is really, really damn good. But yeah, we've just kind of seen him fade. I think Jacoby's cardio is what's kind of giving me the lean here, more so than his technical advantages. And I do give him the technical advantages, but Olajaychuk's not the type to just be kind of, he'll keep pushing forward. So it should be a fun one for sure. Siding with Jacoby, I don't think he finishes him though necessarily, unless Olajaychuk kind of gasses in that third round. So maybe a little poke on the third round finish there, probably get some really big plus money on something like that. But I'm with you. I lean Jacoby for now for sure.
Yeah, and just level of competition as well. The wins really haven't been that great for Olajaychuk. I mean, obviously a finish in that last bout, but like split against Bukauskas, beating Gazmarad and Tigulov, who's not at all a high-level UFC fighter. Yeah. And then Jean Vellante now retired. So, I mean, I think with those wins recently versus, how clean we've seen the performances from Jacoby, how we've seen him, be able to carry his cardio and his pace into the later rounds. I definitely see why he's favored here.
Yeah, I see this as similar to the Grishin fight, Max and Grishin against Dustin Jacoby. Pretty similar styles, Grishin and Olajaychuk, kind of rangy strikers with power. And yeah, Jacoby looked great in that spot, so he's my lead.
All right, well, it was awesome breaking down the card with you tonight, Nick. I hope everyone who viewed enjoyed this breakdown of all the fights coming at you this Saturday. I would also recommend you check out Dine Sports this Saturday morning for a full written breakdown of every fight, including our official picks, what round these finishes occur. We're going to be looking forward to this card the remainder of the week and honing in our selections to give you the best bets and most confident picks we have. So appreciate you coming in and breaking down these fights with me tonight, Nick.
Of course, man. Looking forward to it. And yeah, guys, check out that article. Like I said, there's a few fights here I think both of us need to dig a little bit more on. So these are our takes. We got some leans right now, but if you want those firm picks, definitely check out that article. And yeah, follow us on Twitter. I'm at Nick Marro DFS. And what's
At
your
Anthony Marro _.
Let's go.
Let's go. Should be a great card. Enjoy UFC 272 this Saturday in Las Vegas. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.